So, this is an interesting period from an astrological point of view. We have a wonderful astrologer here at Ananda Sisi who gave us a satsang to our community saying that right now the planet Jupiter, which usually brings optimism, hope, prosperity, spiritual prosperity, wisdom, positive energy, is retrograde and has just moved back into the sign of Capricorn, where it joins the planet Saturn. Now Capricorn in the planet Jupiter in Capricorn is not feeling at home. So he is debilitated. His influence there is debilitated. What is very interesting, however, is first of all to realize that this is a worldly point of view. Worldly means looking at it from the material point of view. In reality, we can also look at it like this. The planets Saturn and Jupiter are often compared to 𝗪𝗟𝗡𝗚, which is Saturn, and Paramahansa Yogananda, Jupiter. So Saturn's influence is discipline, karmic lessons to be learned, the ability, basically, to learn to relate, the opportunity to learn to relate to objective reality. Whereas Jupiter brings more, like I said before, light, prosperity, courage, creativity, and the ability to flow, and so forth. Now, it looks like, that Paramahansa Yogananda was 𝗪𝗟𝗡𝗚's disciple. And it looks like when the planet Jupiter goes into the sign of Saturn, it's like Paramahansa Yogananda, after having been in the world and teaching and spreading the teachings of self-realization and of Kriya Yoga in America and also in Europe, and now he's just moving back into his guru's ashram. Maybe he just needs some seclusion. Now, we can, of course, follow him there and try to find those powers, of positive powers, that positive energy of Jupiter, instead of experiencing it in our outer life, in our life in the world, experience it in ourselves by having deeper meditations. Capricorn is a very good sign for meditation. 𝗪𝗟𝗡𝗚 is a very good teacher, meditation teacher. Saturn is good for concentration. That's one way to look at it. We have to remember that what is night for the worldly man is day for the yogi. What is day for the worldly man is night for the yogi. So, from a yogic point of view, we can follow the planet Jupiter and Paramahansa Yogananda back into the ashram of his guru, and instead of we can still continue to do our work in the world, but instead of being involved, emotionally involved, or even energetically involved, we can still continue to live that life, but at the same time we have to go deeper within. That seems to be the counsel, the suggestions of these planets and of these masters. But there's another interesting power factor in the game, and that is 𝗪𝗟𝗡𝗚's guru, Lahiri Mahasaya. Now, this movement of Jupiter into Capricorn happened yesterday on September 27th. And right in between the date of Lahiri Mahasaya's Mahasamadhi, which is on September 26th, and the day of his birth, which is on September 30th. So we can also find other solace and encouragement in these days, and maybe even this whole month, this whole period, by meditating on Lahiri Mahasaya. He seems like as if he's telling us, okay, your two gurus, 𝗪𝗟𝗡𝗚 and Paramahansa Yogananda, are withdrawing for a while. You can follow them there, and in the meantime, I'm here for you to take care of you. This whole period, if we look at it from a seasonal astrology, Western astrology, is also the period of the sign of Libra. And Swami Kriyananda has written a very insightful, inspiring booklet about astrology. It's called Your Sun Sign as a Spiritual Guide. And when he describes the sign of Libra, he says, this is one of the influence, the planetary or the rays of Libra are in a way the most subtle, the subtlest rays of all the signs. Very, very subtle. They seem to want to convey a deeper search for harmony, a deeper search for connection with truth. Now, Swami Kriyananda was a great, he had a great deep understanding of the human nature, of the human heart. He said when these rays are being absorbed superficially, more on an ego level, on a personality level, then this sign seems to influence us to seek that harmony and that justice and that connection by controlling somehow our outer environment. And when we try to do that, then we long for peace and we will never find it. In fact, people who have a strong Libra in their influence in their chart, unless they are deeply committed to some spiritual path, usually are very restless because they want to find, they so deeply desire harmony in themselves, but they try to create it in the world around them by controlling, exercising control, by trying to control that which never can be controlled, that is to say other people, environment, and so forth, instead of going deeper in meditation and trying to perceive and receive those subtle Libra influences there. So this is then also seems to be that this is the period where Lahiri Mahasaya is trying to help the world and all the, especially probably those who are devotees and on this spiritual path of self-realization and Kriya Yoga. And it is also a period then where we must learn to absorb the subtle rays of Libra deep into our own soul, deep into our own heart, and beware of becoming involved in worldly commotion, you might call it, in the arena of worldly ideas, of opinions, of reactivity, of political ideas, and so forth. The best way, the only way, the masters say it again and again, to change the world is by going deep within, seeking an inner connection with the peace that is part of the soul, the peace, as it says in the Bible, that passes all human understanding, because it exists regardless of what goes on around us. Connect with that peace, and that will create an aura of magnetism around us that will have a beneficial influence on the world, whether we act, regardless of in what field, what social field we act, whether we are in politics or not, or just living very modestly and work in an office or whatever, wherever we are, that magnetism is the only influence that can change the world in some way. So the title of this satsang then is characteristic of Lahiri Mahasaya's life, namely being in the world, but not of the world. So I would like now to together to explore a few ways in which we can realize this type of consciousness, where we are moving in the world as channels of divine channels, and we are really anchored in our own inner soul consciousness, and we are only minimally, marginally influenced by what goes on around us, by the opinions and the vibrations and the negative vibrations and the commotion of the world, you might say. So one way of doing that is to take at heart one of the basic teachings of Sanatana Dharma, which says that this world is essentially a dream of God, a dream of Brahma, who puts in motion just a little part of his consciousness and creates the scene of life, the stage of life. So that image that Shakespearean image, like saying all the world is a stage, can greatly help us to find our own position and therefore also our own power on the stage of this world. So you can look at the world then as a stage, at life as a stage, as a theater, and the play, of course, will be written by God. God is the playwright. You don't see him. He can be still alive in the body, or he can be somewhere else, but you don't see him. But that power, that creative power is still there. The stage director could be the guru, and you don't see the guru very much on stage either. But he knows the guru is trying to, the stage director and the guru, he is trying to get a very deep intuitive understanding of the vibrations of the playwright, of the end of the play itself. And then according to that understanding, he is going to direct the play. And he has an overall view. He doesn't just look at one actor. He doesn't look at the main character, but he also looks at the people who have only a small role. He looks at the costume designers. He looks at everything. He has an overall view. He can relate to reality on all the levels. And then you have good actors and bad actors, and they come at the end of the chain. So let's try to understand then in that perspective what a good actor and a bad actor is. So I think I meditated on this, and I think that a good actor can play any role and give himself fully to the creative process of acting. He becomes almost like a channel for the energy of his character. But then at the end of the play, he's happy. So suppose he plays the role of a scoundrel, of a very bad villain, okay? And he does so as well as he can. He's a good actor. He can play the role of Iago or of Macbeth or whatever. And he does so to the best of his abilities. He gives himself completely. He feels that he's a part of a creative process. Okay, but he's not carried away by the energy of his character. He just channels it in a way. And there is always deep in his heart a happy awareness of being part of a creative flow. Because when we are part of a creative flow, there is always some form of joy. Because that's not the ego, that is the ego surrendering, entering that flow. And that flow comes from a higher source than the ego itself. Now, a bad actor is not aware. He can get involved in his character. He can be carried away by his own emotions, and he loses perspective of what he is supposed to be doing on stage. He gets emotionally involved with his own character or with his own emotions. Maybe he has stage fright, whatever it is. And then he gets blocked, and his performance then, the magnetism, the power of his performance is then compromised by that personal involvement, let's say, by this ego involvement. But the good actor then can, for example, even if he's a bad actor, if he plays a bad role of a villain, at the end, if it all went well, and if also, because he's also aware of the roles of the other actors, of course, if it all went well, he's happy at the end. The play Hamlet, probably one of the most famous plays, ended with a bunch of corpses basically on the stage, including Hamlet himself. And then the curtain falls, and then that's the end of the play, and all the actors stand up and very happily bow to the audience and accept the praise and the applause. So that is then, this image may help us to realize that we are only actors and that we are trying to tune in to some higher guidance. Now, to some higher form of inspiration that might even be more appealing for when you're on the spiritual path, that you're trying to feel some higher form of inspiration, not just guidance, but inspiration, richness, fullness, creativity. So I would like to give you an example, a famous example from American history, and that could be President Abraham Lincoln. Master Paramahansa Yogananda said about him that he died in a previous life, that in a previous incarnation he had been a yogi in the Himalayas, living the life of a yogi of meditation, and that towards the end of his life he had a desire to come back, live on the world stage again, and no longer in a cave, on the world stage again, and help humanity to defeat, to overcome racial prejudice. Racial prejudice is described by Swami Sri Yukteswar as one of the 8 meannesses of the heart. So it is a prejudice, it is a emotion that must be overcome. So he was born as Abraham Lincoln then in somewhere in Kentucky, which was a slave state in those days, in those years, which means that slavery not just happened, but it was an official institution, you might say. It was completely legal. It was perfectly normal to buy and sell people and have them work under terrible circumstances many times, very often, not always, but in any case to completely rob them of their freedom. This was a normal situation in a number of southern states of the United States then. So Abraham Lincoln was born into a very poor family, and then he worked his way up to success and fame, you might say, without particular ambition. But he was, from the very beginning, passionately interested in the philosophy, the political philosophy of the founding fathers of the United States. And usually we always quote, it's sometimes quoted maybe even too much, but the basic rights that these founding fathers defined as the right of life, the right to live in liberty, and to pursue happiness, the pursuit of happiness. And also that they conceived a republic with a government for the people and by the people. So this was an experiment, okay, and he very deeply believed in that, and he tried to get to the core to really deeply tune into the thoughts of those founding fathers and to elaborate their political inspiration further and to see if this type of democracy could be perpetuated also. So, and then at the same time, he loathed slavery. He just couldn't stand it. And at the same time, during his life, there was a very strong movement in the northern states, and maybe also in some of the southern states, of abolitionists. People who were very emotional in their fight against slavery. They were very aggressive, and their methods were sometimes even illegal. So you have to understand that the United States was a federation, and that the powers of the federal government, which were in Washington D.C. still are limited. They cannot interfere. They can only interfere up to a certain point in the individual states' rights. So the abolitionists were very emotional again about what their feelings of justice, and what they lacked was political perspective. But in general, they also lacked spiritual perspective. When Abraham Lincoln started his career, this was a crucial moment. So he always believed that the federal government did not have the right to abolish slavery because they didn't have that power, constitutionally speaking. But he also believed that slavery would not die a natural death because simply the times were changing, and he could feel that it was something that could no longer be tolerated. In any case, it was just it was becoming an anachronism. But he also felt that it should be isolated, it should be contained where it was. The states, however, were not that complete as they are now, and settlers were still occupying new territories, and then they asked the government to be recognized as a state. So I think it was Kansas, but I'm not quite sure, but they, at a certain point, new territories wanted to be recognized as a state, and they wanted to have slaves. And that's where Abraham Lincoln became very, very determined to enter politics. And he started to give political debates with people who were not against these. They felt that the new territories should have the right to have slaves, and he became very strong in that. So he became also famous because he was a very good public speaker. He was able to convey very deep feelings through his words. He had that gift, and it was clearly the gift of someone who had spent many, many years in deep meditation. Because when we have a spiritual life, we have spiritual discipline, and we meditate for many, many years, we get some recognition of truth and some connection with deeper truths. Then, when we speak in public, we have real ideas. I will explain that a little bit better later on. We have real ideas that have power. Our speech has a certain power, the power of deep feeling. People who don't have that perspective, who don't have that inner connection, they think they have ideas and they shout them in the streets. But in reality, those ideas are only emotions. They are ideas in disguise. They are opinions also. So what is the difference between opinions and ideas? Opinions are divisive. They lack perspective. They lack depth. Ideas come from a deeper realm of consciousness. I'll go into that a little later, as I said before. So back to Abraham Lincoln then. He became president, and immediately, because the southern states that were slave states knew that he was against slavery, they seceded. So there's an interesting anecdote. When he heard that he had won the election, people told him that, so you have won, you're the president of the United States. He reacted by saying, oh, okay, I think I need to tell my wife, because this is much more important for her than for me. So you see, there was a non-attachment. There was an inner depth, an inner calmness that was not influenced by the commotion of the world. But there was a lot of power and a lot of clarity in that inner space that he lived in with his heart and his mind. So he became president, and then the southern states in protest seceded, and he had to, at that point, he felt he had a vision that democracy means that power has a deadline. So the government, the people choose a government, that government can stay in power for a certain period, and then it finishes, and the people should, through their votes, express a new judgment and either confirm the same government or vote for someone else. He felt that once a government has been chosen, and so democratically chosen, the people who lost the elections had no right to secede. They had no right to get out of the Union. They had to wait for 4 years and then again try to win the next elections. So Lincoln, who was in his heart a peaceful man, he started basically a civil war. He tried to occupy the territories of these southern states and to hold the Union together. Instead, the Union, those southern states, those slave states then, came together in a confederation, and they started to fight against the Unionists, the people from the north who wanted to preserve the Union. This civil war was terrible, and America lost more soldiers in that civil war than in the wars that they were involved in since then. But it was at the same time a final reckoning with the institution of slavery, because at a certain point Lincoln saw the possibility to abolish slavery under martial law. So he said, from now on, all the people who are kept in a state of slavery in those states who are fighting against the legitimate elected government of the United States are declared free. So the slaves from that moment on, were officially free. This was under martial law. Then, later on, he also had to make them free political. He had to bring a new law that officially declared that slavery was no longer permitted. And there he was very patient. He started talking with all those politicians there. He went to their houses. He invited them over. He spoke with each one of them. And then after a lot of persuasion, he managed to pass a new law also where slavery was abolished, no longer permitted in the United States. Now, he loved theater. Lincoln loved theater. He loved Shakespeare. He never read novels, but he loved going to the theater. And he probably deep in his heart felt that he had a mission, that he was to be a good actor, that he had to fulfill this mission, and that he had to be a good actor and to bring this mission forth. So at that point then, he when the Civil War was over and the northern states had won, one evening he went with his wife to the theater, significantly, and there he was killed by a man from the south who wanted to take revenge. So this was a dramatic life, very dramatic, but it was an extremely inspiring life. He was never recognized. He was not loved during his life. Only later did people realize what an important actor this man had been on the stage of the world. Okay, so how do we go then from the realm of opinions to the realm of deep ideas? How can we live in the world as channels of a power, a divine power, that is much greater than we are? What helps here is to study the teachings of yoga, which say that we have essentially three bodies. We have a physical body, we have an astral body, and we have a causal body. There are also three stages in creation: the material world, the astral world, and the causal world. Now, we might say that ideas, that opinions and emotions are mostly prevalent on the physical level and on the astral level. Astral is energy. The astral world is a world of energy. And so when we look at the world and we see things happening and we react with emotion, and we develop opinions and ideas. We develop opinions and we become opinionated and we want to fight for our ideas. Then probably what we should do then as yogis is to go deep within, calm those motions, work on inner calmness, on control, and try to connect with the realm of pure ideas. Yogananda has a beautiful affirmation in the booklet about, I think it's called Scientific Healing Affirmation, where he says, "My dreams of perfections are the bridges that carry me to the realm of pure ideas. So that is, when we speak from that depth, from that perception, that is where we can really make a difference. So the realm of pure ideas is best represented by the sayings of the masters. And since we are talking about Lahiri Mahasaya, I would like to quote him on a few of his sayings. Shivani, our Shivani who lives here and who's very creative, and was planning, and maybe she's already writing it now, to write a book called Sutras of Self-Realization. This, of course, refers back to Patanjali's book, which is called the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. So what are sutras? Sutra is usually translated as aphorism, a short paragraph, 5-6 sentences, very compact, very, very powerful. Why are they powerful? Because they come from the realm of pure ideas. They come from the causal world, and the causal world contains the thoughts of God. So when we are with our hearts in the causal world, we receive the inspiration, the pure ideas of God. The masters give us these pure ideas. For example, let's look at one of them. Lahiri says, man's greatest duty in the world is to listen to the sound of Om. Man's greatest duty, or only duty, he probably says, is to listen, to learn to listen to the sound of Om. So this is a very short statement, but the characteristic of causal ideas are that they are a nourishment for the soul. We can always get back to them. So when we are restless, when we are emotional about something, and you just open a book written by Yogananda, written by Swami Kriyananda, and you just read even just a few lines, you connect again with the deeper realms of divine ideas, of the causal realm of divine ideas. Your thoughts are again guided in the and your emotions are again guided in the direction of the causal world, and you can connect there. So when we think, for example, of the world situation right now, which is challenging for many people, there is a pandemic, there are very different opinions and emotions about how this pandemic could be, overcome. And people are, at least here in Italy, I don't know about the other countries, but here there is a lot of discussion, a lot of, it is an arena of emotions, basically. When I look at it, and I try not to look at it too much, because I'm much happier when I'm in the realm of pure ideas than I could be when I am in the arena of the emotions and opinions. But when I look at it, it feels like, again, that there is no power behind any of the things that are being said in this emotional arena. And so I need to go back and listen to Lahiri. And what is he saying to me? Learn to listen to the sound of Om. Now, on the path of self-realization of Kriya Yoga, there is a technique which is called the Ohm Technique. And you rest your elbows on a special Om board so that you can close your ears without having to, you can lean on the Om board with your elbows and then you can close your ears. And the instruction is to listen for the inner sounds in the right part of the brain. And I've been doing that for probably over 30 years. Can I say that I'm able to hear the sound of Om, the voice of God, the voice of my own soul in all its purity? Honestly, no. But what has this practice of 30 years brought me? Enthusiasm. Not enthusiasm for any worldly cause, enthusiasm to listen better, to calm down, to gain access to that realm of pure ideas, to learn to listen. Now, with my temperament, listening has never been one of my first best natural qualities. So for me, it takes a lot of self-discipline. But what I have been able to hear, what I have been able to feel in my heart, gives me enough enthusiasm to continue. That is the power of a pure idea coming from a great master, coming from the causal world, coming from within our own causal body. Let's look at another one that Lahiri Mahasaya says. He says, Kriya is the solution for all your problems. One sentence. Kriya is the key to the solution to all your problems. So that is again a powerful thought, a powerful sutra, not something that you can just listen to on the radio and then you go to work. No, it is a thought that we should meditate on. We should try to develop a lifestyle that helps us to understand the deeper truth of this sutra. If you practice Kriya Yoga, or if you even practice the techniques, the other techniques that are on the path of Kriya Yoga, if you do Yogananda's energization exercises and you practice the technique of Hong So, you will find, if you meditate on this thought, Kriya Yoga, or meditation, but let's say Kriya Yoga is the solution to all problems, you will find that this is a formidable, how to say it, it is a formidable inspiration to go deeper and deeper and deeper into meditation, to learn to gain access to the deeper realms, to learn to calm your feelings, concentrate the mind, open the heart, and to listen. This capacity to listen has much more power than our reactive process. So, Lahiri Mahasaya then, who is now active in the world since Sri Yukteswar is in his own ashram as Saturn in the sign of Capricorn, and Yogananda, the planet Jupiter, has just joined him there in his secluding. And Lahiri is telling us, why not go with them in the ashram? Why not make your heart a hermitage? Why not unplug the threads that keep you bounded, that keep you tied to the arena of opinions and emotions? That is such wonderful advice. So let's meditate then on the presence of this great Yogavatar. Like I said yesterday, or the day before yesterday, September 26th, was the day of his Mahasamadhi. September 30th will be the day of his birth. Let's meditate. Let's feel that presence. Let's resolve to follow that advice. Try to find solutions to all our problems by deep yoga meditation. And he will bless us greatly. And that is the only real contribution that we can make to change the world that we live in. There have been many predictions, also from Yogananda himself, from Swami Kriyananda, about the hard times that are coming. It doesn't make any difference if we are real yogis. And like I said in the beginning, for the yogi, what is night? For the worldly man, for the yogi is day. What is day for the worldly man? For the yogi is night. So we should all be very happy and meditate with and find that hermitage, that ashram within our own hearts. Meditate with Sri Yukteswar. Meditate with Master, with Yogananda. And when we are out there in the world doing our duties, trying to do them as a channel of the peaceful, light influence of Lahiri Mahasaya. Joy and peace to you.